So you know what exactly what years you were a regular?
I kind of petered out there for a while. I know that I made my first appearance on Arkansas Week in I think the spring of '89. I was in my 20s. I was education reporter for the Arkansas Gazette. And something had happened involving a shooting, not at a school, I think, but somebody shot at a school bus or something like that. And I got dispatched to go to Arkansas Week and talk about this event that was much more shocking to people, 35 years ago, or surprising maybe. And so I was on that, and it's one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. I could have, if I still had a VHS, I could have pulled out the tape and told you exactly when it was. But I just stumbled around so much. I was not cut out for television, I can tell you that. And I had no experience with it, and when I watched myself, I'm like Ernie, I'm never watching myself again. But I know it was a topic of shooting around school children. I think it was a school bus. So.
But they had you back at some point?
Well, then we left the state for 10 years when before the Gazette closed. My husband, Rob Moritz, who teaches here at UCA, now, he and I were both reporters at the Gazette. And when it was clear to us that the Gazette was going to be the loser in the newspaper war, we moved to Nashville, Tennessee for 10 years. We moved back in '99, and I took the job as editor of Arkansas Business, which was something that wasn't even on my radar 10 years earlier. And then I got asked a lot to come to Arkansas Week a lot from '99, probably for the next 10 or 12 years after that. I got asked a lot, and I would come when I could. The weekly, we also, Arkansas Business is weekly, and we also have a weekly rhythm. And Friday is when it starts over, and it's the day, Friday mornings when Arkansas Week is taping is the day that the Arkansas Business staff has always met to plan the next week's issue, well, to finalize the next week's issue. And so I know that I gave up the editorship in 21, and my successor, Lance Turner, has been even filled in for Steve Barnes a lot over the years, but he's having trouble making it work with that schedule now.
Yeah. What were some of the topics in the years that you were regular?
I was never much. Arkansas Week has always been, mostly politics, state politics, and some national. And I've never really been a political reporter, an occasional political observer, I would say, but not really a political reporter like most of the people that have been on this program. So Steve would try to make sure that we had some business and economic stories to talk about, which was more my, I wouldn't say expertise, but it was the beat I was working at Arkansas Business. And and I always felt like there was a real attempt to get a good cross-section on the panel, to get more women on the panel, to get minorities on the panel, although that has always been, I think, hard. There are a lot of women who work in news, but usually they're reporters, and it's pretty rare for newspapers to let reporters go on and be analysts or commentators like that. So that one time I was on Arkansas Week in the '80s was unusual that way. But as editor, I had a lot more latitude to do that. There weren't a lot of women available to be on Arkansas Week. So a lot of people would see me out in public and like, I saw you on Arkansas Week. I thought, really? A lot of people watch Arkansas Week.
Yeah, very loyal.
Yes, viewers. Very loyal.
Anything stick out to you in particular? Any interesting conversations or any, excuse me.
Just that you know, I was always happy to be able to contribute to it, but when I would do it, I really had to make a plan for the whole staff at Arkansas Business to either change our meeting or somebody else to leave the meeting or whatever for me to come up and do it. So it was always, you know, I always felt like it's something I want to do more of, but it's just so hard on so many different people and the whole product for me to come up to Arkansas Week. But I will say that I will echo what others have said. Steve Barnes was masterful. He was I know he was the moderator when I was on it in 1989. I think it was spring of '89. He, you know, and I had known Steve a little bit before then. He grew up in North Little Rock, around the corner, on the street that intersected the street I grew up on. And so that was a little hotbed of journalists that came out of that. Doug Thompson, who's been on Arkansas Week a lot, and Steve, and Laura Cartwright Hardy, who was with the Democrat Gazette for a long time. We all grew up just like on these two streets that intersected.
I grew up in North Little Rock too.
Yeah, so.
Something in the water. But
I guess so.
Steve, he could anticipate the conversation. He knew where everyone was going. He could keep the flow. He
really could. He seemed to know when to help you out. I mean, really, he was, there's a gift to that, really. He could kind of, you know, like, I guess like playing in a band for a long time or something, where you kind of know where somebody's starting to struggle and you need to step up and cover for them. And a lot of that with me.
I learned as a guest, don't make eye contact with him if I don't have anything to add. Early on, I would mistakenly just politely nod, and Steve would look at me and, Michael, you know.
Well, I tried to make sure that the business issues that he wanted on the agenda, that I was prepared on those, and let the people who understood politics better than I do stick with the politics.
What did you think of the show itself?
Well, I used to watch it when I wasn't on it, but I stopped watching it when I was on it. I mean, I would not watch it when I was on it. I had always enjoyed it. I learned a lot from watching Arkansas Week. I mean, because it's very hard, even for any journalist, especially a working journalist, to stay up with what other people are doing. You've got your beat. You're very busy on what you're doing, and you, for me, it was always a good way to learn from the experts what was happening in the world of politics in a way that was, you know, more conversational, more analytical than just reading news stories.
And it was unusual, you know, back in, I guess still in '99, there were a lot of shows like that.
I didn't know of one that was going on in Nashville during the time that we lived there, but I don't think I was completely aware that it wasn't that it was unusual, because I started my career in 1982 at the Pine Bluff Commercial, and you know, it started up about that same, I guess, not too many months later it started up, and so I guess I wasn't completely aware that it was unusual. You know, there's a thing in Arkansas where everybody, if we have it here, everybody else has it, and probably better. You know, we have that attitude about everything. Our newspapers and our restaurants and our politicians or anything. If we have it here, everybody has it, and they probably have better than we do, and it's just not true.
Is there any more that you can say on what it was like being a young woman journalist in the '80s?
I don't even remember it. I think back on it now, that the news business was really wide open for women back then. For one thing, nobody was being paid very well So it was one of those, you know, we were afraid it was going to turn into what we called a pink collar ghetto, where because the wages were low, especially if you worked at some place like the Pine Bluff Commercial, where only women would be willing to do those jobs. But I mean, there were a lot of women that worked at the Pine Bluff Commercial when I was there. I left there, I was city editor when I left there after like 6 years down there, and went to the Gazette, and there were a lot of women in the newsroom there, and I won't say that the Gazette was quite the meritocracy that the Pine Bluff Commercial was. When I got to the Gazette, it was owned by Gannett, and they really had favorites there. They had their golden children that they had decided they were going to really promote, and I wasn't one of them. But at the Pine Bluff Commercial, really, if you showed you could do something, they would give you something else and see if you could do it. So I moved up quite a lot while I was down there. Got a lot of experience, learned a lot. Used to go and stay with Paul Greenberg's kids. So because he was still down there, it was, you know, that was before he ever went to the Democrat Gazette.
Did you and Ernie overlap on the show? Were you on the show together?
Oh, probably. I think we probably were on the show together.
Did you make any connections while you were on Arkansas Week with other journalists? Or?
Oh, I got to know some better than I would have known them before. And I met people like Hoyt Purvis, whose name I knew and who I'd seen on the show, but I didn't know him. I met people here like Steve Bronner. I don't remember ever. I don't know if I would have ever met him in person if we had not been on Arkansas Week together.
And we're also interviewing Rex Nelson. Were you ever on the show with him?
I think so, but Rex and I run into each other in a lot of places. So, yeah, boy, you should definitely talk to Rex Nelson. He's a much better storyteller.
Any thoughts about journalism today? I mean, it's taken such a drastic turn.
Well, I feel like some of us are just dinosaurs in that way. That the thing that was lucky in my career was that I fell into, and I mean literally stumbled into, the business journal niche when we were still in Nashville. I worked at the Nashville Business Journal during those years that we lived in Nashville, and that was one of the reasons that I was recruited back to be the editor of Arkansas Business. And that has been a strange little thing. When I was working at the Nashville Business Journal, and even when I got to Arkansas Business, these weekly business journals were kind of the stepchildren of local print media. They had a very small audience, and they served them well, but they were just they were just kind of like the stepchild. And that has really changed, because that niche that the business journals serve is an audience that can and will pay for news. They can afford it, and they will pay for a news product that they consider valuable. And so those business journals are now really like the healthiest of the local print news.
Yeah, still have a subscriber base.
Still subscriber based. Arkansas Business is, if not at its absolute peak, I mean, it goes up and down a little bit every month, but it's basically at its peak. It's never really been higher than it is now for paid circulation at Arkansas Business. So it is a strange. That's just been luck for me. I didn't foresee that when I first started at a business journal in the 90s. I wasn't that brilliant. I just needed a job, and there was one available, and it really changed it changed the trajectory of my career for sure. But it was just it's just luck in hindsight that I ended up in one where there weren't a lot of layoffs. My husband worked for Stevens Media for I guess almost 14 years, something like that, before they shut down that, and of course it was sold and doesn't exist anymore. And he had survived round after round after round of layoffs, because that's the reality of journalism. That's the reality of professional news organizations. And we didn't have that at Arkansas Business. It's still got basically the same size staff that I worked with when I got there in 1999. So it's not, you know, we're you know, sympathetic to our journalist friends that are at the daily newspapers or the local weeklies around the state, the few that still exist. We're sympathetic to it, but we're just not in that same position in the business journals.